The chamber was enormous, built to hold representatives from 47 different species. Crystal pillars stretched toward a domed ceiling that showed the stars beyond, a reminder that this council governed thousands of worlds across the galaxy. The air was filtered to accommodate beings who breathed everything from methane to pure oxygen, separated by invisible energy barriers. Some delegates floated in tanks of liquid. Others stood on platforms adjusted for their gravity needs. And at the far end, in the smallest seat, sat Ji-won Kim. She was alone. For the first time in 60 years, Earth had sent only one person to the Galactic Council session. The other species didn't notice or didn't care. They never paid much attention to the human section anyway. Counselor Vexstar was speaking. He was a tall being, nearly 3 meters high, with skin that shimmered between blue and purple. His species, the hierarchy, had been part of the council for 12,000 years. They considered themselves the guiding force of galactic civilization. Right now, Vexstar was explaining why humanity's request for full voting rights was, once again, being denied. The species known as humans have contributed to council affairs for a mere 6 decades, Vexstar said, his voice carrying across the chamber with natural authority. While we acknowledge their enthusiasm, they remain emotionally unstable. Their history is filled with violence against their own kind. They make decisions based on feelings rather than logic. To grant them equal status would be irresponsible. Several delegates made sounds of agreement. The Krell, representative, a massive reptilian creature covered in bronze scales, rumbled his approval. The Luminar delegate, whose body was made of living crystal that pulsed with soft light, chimed in harmony. Even the Typhon, floating in their methane tank, created bubbles that their translator rendered as supportive words. Ji-won sat perfectly still. Her dark eyes watched Vexstar without expression. She was 47 years old and had served as Earth's ambassador for 12 years. Before her, there had been others. All of them had heard variations of the same speech. Humans were too young, too primitive, too emotional, too aggressive, too soft. The reasons changed, but the answer was always no. Furthermore, Vexstar continued, humanity's insistence on maintaining such a large military force demonstrates their lack of civilized thinking. We live in an age of peace. The Council's diplomatic corps handles all conflicts. Yet humans continue to build warships, train soldiers, develop weapons. This reveals their true nature. Ji-won's lips curved slightly, but it wasn't quite a smile. She thought about the reports sitting in her secure files. Reports about how human peacekeepers had stopped 7 major conflicts in the past year alone. Reports about human patrol ships that kept the trade lanes clear of pirates while council diplomats debated proper procedures for months. Reports about the border worlds where human soldiers were the only thing standing between peaceful colonies and the void marauders. But she said nothing. Not yet. The vote was called. 46 species voted on whether to grant humanity full membership status. 38 voted no. 5 abstained. 3 voted yes. Species that humanity had helped during various crises. The humans who had saved their colonies, or shared food during famines, or sent medical teams during plagues, they hadn't forgotten, even if everyone else had. Vexstar announced the result with obvious satisfaction. The motion fails. Humanity will remain in probationary status, as is appropriate for such a young species. Perhaps, in another century, when you have matured, we can revisit this discussion. That was when Ji-won stood up. The movement was smooth and unhurried. She didn't slam her hands on the desk or raise her voice. She simply rose to her feet, and something about the way she did it made the chamber gradually fall silent. "Counselor Vexstar," she said quietly. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. "I want to thank you." Star's eyes widened slightly. He had expected anger, perhaps an emotional outburst that would prove his point about human instability. Thanks were unexpected. You have taught humanity a valuable lesson today. Ji-won continued. For 60 years, we have tried to be part of this council. We followed your rules. We paid the membership fees that none of the founding species pay. We shared our technology freely, while others kept theirs secret. We sent our people to die protecting council worlds, while our own requests for aid were debated for months. We did everything you asked and more, and today, you have finally made something clear to us." She reached into her jacket and pulled out a small data chip. She placed it on her desk, where the recording systems could see it clearly. This chip contains humanity's formal withdrawal from the Galactic Council. Effective immediately, all treaties are void. All trade agreements are canceled. All defense pacts are terminated. All technological sharing agreements are ended. Every human citizen in Council space has been recalled and is already en route home. Every human station, outpost, and facility in shared systems is being evacuated as I speak. The silence in the chamber was total now. Even the atmospheric recyclers seemed to have gone quiet. Vexstar found his voice first. "You cannot be serious. Humanity needs the Council. You need our markets, our technology, our protection." Guan picked up her small bag. She had brought very little to this session, they realized now. Just the data chip and her personal items. Nothing else. "We needed partners," she said softly. "We needed equals. We needed respect. You have shown us, repeatedly and clearly, that we will never receive those things here. So we are leaving. Earth wishes the Galactic Council well. We hope you find the peace and prosperity you seek." She walked toward the exit. Her footsteps echoed in the enormous chamber. "Wait, Delara," of the Luminar called out, her crystalline voice ringing with something that might have been concern. "You are making a mistake. Where will you go? What will you do?" Guan paused at the doorway. She looked back at the 46 species who had just rejected humanity once more. "We will do what humans have always done," she said. "We will survive. We will build. We will thrive. We will do it without you, because you have taught us that we must." Then she walked through the door, and it sealed behind her with a soft hiss. For several long moments, nobody in the council chamber spoke. Then Vexstar laughed, though it sounded forced. "Childish theatrics. They will return within a month, begging for readmission. Mark my words." But even as he spoke, reports were already coming in. Human ships were jumping to FTL across the galaxy. Stations were going dark. Facilities were being sealed and abandoned. And every single communication channel to Earth had just gone completely silent. Humanity was leaving, and they were doing it fast. The first reports came in 72 hours after Gi-Wan Kim walked out of the council chamber. They were simple, straightforward, and increasingly alarming. Every human vessel had vanished from council space. Not destroyed, not captured, simply gone. Cargo ships that had been delivering goods to Typhon stations had jumped to FTL in the middle of their routes. Their holds still full of undelivered supplies. Patrol ships that had been guarding the rimward border against pirate activity had withdrawn in perfect formation, leaving their posts unmanned. Even the civilian transports, the small family ships that traveled between human and alien worlds, had all disappeared. Station Master Krelvar stood in the control room of Trading Post 77, staring at empty docking bays. 3 days ago, this station had been bustling. 12 human cargo vessels had been offloading goods, their crews friendly and efficient as always. The humans who ran the station's main reactor had been in the engine rooms. The human doctors in the medical bay had been treating patients from 6 different species. Now the docking bays were empty. The reactor was running on automatic, but the control room was locked. The medical bay had a sign that read "Automated Systems Active. Emergency protocols engaged. Human medical staff have departed. We wish you good health." Krelvar tried to access the reactor controls. Every password had been changed. The systems still worked, but nobody except the departed humans knew how to adjust them anymore. The station would keep running, but if anything went wrong, there was nobody left who could fix it. Similar reports came from across the galaxy. The human colonies and shared systems had been evacuated overnight. The buildings were left clean and intact, the power still running, the water system still functioning, but every human was gone. They had taken their personal belongings and nothing else, leaving behind furniture, equipment, everything that wasn't theirs personally, Counselor Delara investigated one of the abandoned human colonies personally. She floated through the empty streets in her protective sphere, her crystalline body pulsing with confused colors. The colony had housed 15,000 humans and had been home to one of their major research facilities. Now, it was a ghost town. The research facility was locked, but not damaged. Delara's technicians managed to open the doors after 2 days of work. Inside, they found empty laboratories. Every computer had been wiped clean. Every prototype had been removed. Every research note had been deleted. The facility was intact and functional, but all the knowledge was gone. They planned this, Delara said to her aide. This was not a sudden decision. They have been preparing for months, maybe years. The aide, a younger Luminor named Kess, chimed nervously. Should we attempt to contact them? We have been attempting contact for 4 days, Delara replied. Every channel is closed. Every relay is silent. It is as if humanity has erected a wall around their entire territory. She was more right than she knew, that moment, High Arbiter. Kryn was receiving reports from the diplomatic corps. Every attempt to reach Earth had failed. Every attempt to reach any human colony had failed. The communication relays that humans had built and maintained throughout 3 sectors had simply stopped accepting external connections. Kryn called an emergency council session. All 46 species gathered again, but this time the mood was different. The empty human seat seemed larger somehow, more noticeable. This is a temporary tantrum, Kryn announced, his voice firm. He was an old being, having served as High Arbiter for 3 centuries. He had seen species come and go. Humanity is acting out of wounded pride. They will realize their mistakes soon enough. They need our markets. They need our technology. Most importantly, they need our protection. The Void Marauders alone would destroy them within a year without council support. Vexstar nodded agreement. Indeed, I have reviewed human economic data. 70% of their trade was with council species. Their entire economy will collapse within months. They will come back, and when they do, we should make them understand the cost of such foolish behavior. But others were not so sure. Taiyang Park had served as Earth's economic attach for 15 years before retiring 5 years ago. He had chosen to remain in council space, living on a mixed-species station. Now, he requested permission to address the council, a right granted to retired diplomats of any species. The old man stood before the assembly. His hair was white now, and he walked with a cane, but his eyes were sharp. You are making a mistake, he said simply. I tried to warn you before. Humanity is not dependent on the council. We've been self-sufficient for 20 years. Impossible, Vexstar scoffed. The economic data shows what we wanted you to see, Taiyang interrupted. Did you never wonder why human ships were always available to transport goods? Why human engineers always seemed to have time to fix your problems? Why human diplomats always had resources to help during crises? The council was silent. It was because we had excess, Taiyang continued. We had more ships than we needed, more engineers than we could employ at home, more resources than our own economy required. We shared because we believed in cooperation. We helped because we thought we were building something together. But we never needed you. You needed us. Ridiculous, Kryn said, but his voice lacked its earlier certainty. Taiyang smiled sadly. You will see. The relay network will fail first. Humans built it and maintained it. You all used it for free, but you never learned how it actually works. Then your automated systems will start breaking down. Then your trade routes will become dangerous again. Then, enough, Kryn commanded. You are dismissed. As Taiyang left the chamber, he passed the empty human seat, touched it gently, remembering the friends he had worked with. He wondered if he would ever see Earth again. 2 weeks passed. The council continued their normal business, though tension filled every session. Vexstar insisted everything was fine. Kryn maintained that humanity would return soon. But the reports kept coming in, and they were getting worse. The Typhon Commonwealth was experiencing widespread system failures. Their atmospheric processors, which regulated the air in their vast floating cities, were malfunctioning. These processors had been designed by a human named Minji Choi 20 years ago. The Typhon had used them ever since, but they had never bothered to fully understand how they worked. They had simply called human technicians whenever repairs were needed. Now there were no human technicians to call. The Typhon engineers tried to fix the processors themselves, but the systems were far more complex than they appeared. Within a month, 3 floating cities had to be evacuated due to atmospheric contamination. The Krell Dominion faced a different problem. Their mining operations, which formed the backbone of their economy, had been running at peak efficiency for 18 years. They produced 40% more resources than they had before, all thanks to human-designed optimization algorithms. Krell engineers had implemented the algorithms, but had never fully understood the mathematics behind them. When the systems began to drift out of calibration, the Krell tried to adjust them. Production dropped immediately. They tried to reset to previous settings, but without the underlying mathematical framework, they couldn't maintain stability. Within 2 months, Krell mining output had fallen to 60% of what it had been. And then there were the pirates. For 20 years, pirate activity in Council space had been at historic lows. Everyone had attributed this to the Council's diplomatic initiatives and strong laws. But Delara was beginning to understand the truth. She pulled up security reports from the past 2 decades and studied the patterns. Human patrol ships had been everywhere. Quietly, without fanfare, they had been guarding the trade routes. They had stopped pirate attacks before they happened. They had tracked criminal organizations across multiple systems. They had shared intelligence with Council, security forces, who had taken credit for the arrests. Now those patrol ships were gone, and the pirates were returning. Attacks on merchant vessels had tripled in just 3 weeks. Council security forces, used to having human intelligence and support, were overwhelmed. Delara presented her findings to Kryn privately. The High Arbiter listened in silence, his expression growing darker. "How did we not see this?" he asked finally. "They never asked for credit," Delara replied. "They simply did the work. And we assumed it was happening because of our own superiority, not because of their constant effort." Kryn looked at the empty human seat in his private office, a symbolic piece he kept for important decisions. "Can we reach them?" he asked. "No," Delara said. "They have completely isolated themselves, and I do not think they will listen, even if we could contact them. We had 60 years to treat them with respect. We chose not to." The High Arbiter had no response to that. In the silence, both of them began to realize that something fundamental had changed in the galaxy. The humans were gone, and their absence was creating holes that nobody else knew how to fill. 3 months had passed since humanity's withdrawal, and the Galactic Council was falling apart. Not all at once, not dramatically, but like a machine, losing vital components, one by one, until it could no longer function properly.
The Typhon Commonwealth had been forced to abandon 7 of their floating cities entirely.
The atmospheric processors had failed beyond their ability to repair, and without human expertise, they couldn't build new ones that worked as well. Millions of Typhon citizens had to relocate to other cities, straining resources and causing social unrest. Their representative at the council, a being named Cephas, had stopped attending sessions altogether. He was too busy managing the crisis at home. The Krell Dominion was facing economic collapse. Their mining output continued to fall, and they had started rationing essential resources. Fights had broken out between different Krell clans over resource allocation. Their military, once considered the strongest in the council after the hierarchy, was stretched thin, trying to maintain order. Krellvar, who had once mocked human inefficiency, now spent his days trying to manually optimize systems that had run automatically for nearly 2 decades, but it was the infrastructure failures that truly frightened the council leadership. The relay network that connected thousands of worlds had been built over centuries by multiple species, but the modern upgrades had all been done by humans. They had improved efficiency by 300%, reduced lag time to almost nothing, and made the network so reliable that everyone had forgotten it, even needed maintenance. Now the network was degrading. Messages took longer to transmit. Some relays stopped working entirely. Council technicians swarmed over the systems, trying to understand how the human upgrades functioned. They found incredibly complex code, elegant mathematical formulas, and design philosophies that seemed simple but were actually sophisticated beyond their current understanding. It's like they built a masterpiece and made it look easy. One Luminar technician reported to Delara. Every human upgrade integrates perfectly with our old systems, but does things in ways we didn't know were possible. And without their documentation, we can't figure out how they did it. They left no documentation? Delara asked. They left plenty, the technician replied, but it's incomplete. The basic operating principles are there, but the advanced functions require knowledge they didn't share. I think they knew this day might come. Delara felt something cold settle in her core. The humans hadn't just walked away. It made sure the council couldn't simply copy their work and continue without them. It wasn't sabotage exactly, everything still worked. But without human knowledge, it would slowly fail, and the council couldn't rebuild it to the same standard. The security situation was even worse. Admiral Hayon of the Luminar fleet was reviewing attack reports with growing horror. In just 3 months, pirate attacks had increased by 500%. The Void Marauders, the aggressive species, from beyond Council space had launched raids on 12 border worlds. Smuggling operations that had been shut down for years were operating openly again. Where were the humans? She asked her intelligence officer. Everywhere came the reply. We have gone back through 20 years of security data. Human ships were conducting regular patrols along every major trade route. They were running surveillance on known criminal organizations. They were sharing real-time intelligence with our forces, and we never noticed because they never made a formal agreement to do it. They just did it. Hayon pulled up a tactical map showing the current location of Council security forces versus where they needed to be. The gaps were enormous. The Council had perhaps 30% of the patrol coverage they needed, and most of that was concentrated around core worlds, leaving the frontier exposed. How did they cover so much territory? She wondered aloud. They had more ships than we realized, her officer said. And their ships were faster, more efficient. We always thought they were overcompensating, building too many warships for a species that claimed to want peace. Now we understand they weren't overcompensating. They were doing the job that needed to be done. The council called another emergency session. This time, even the most stubborn delegates had to admit there was a serious problem. Vexstar, who had been so confident 3 months ago, looked diminished somehow. The shimmer in his skin had dulled. "We must contact Earth," he said, though the words seemed to cause him physical pain. "We must negotiate their return to the council." "We have tried," Kryn replied wearily. "All channels remain closed. They are not responding to any communication attempts." "Then we must send a delegation," Vexstar insisted. "A physical delegation that goes to human space and requests an audience. Surely they will not refuse to speak with us face to face. That may be seen as an intrusion. They explicitly stated they wished to be left alone. They do not get to simply leave." Vexstar's voice rose, finally showing the frustration he had been suppressing. "They were part of this council. They have responsibilities. They cannot just abandon us." The chamber fell silent at those words. Several delegates looked away, uncomfortable. It was old Tai Yang who spoke from his seat in the observer section. Responsibilities? For 60 years, humanity fulfilled responsibilities you never acknowledged. They protected worlds that called them warmongers. They shared technology with species that called them primitive. They built infrastructure for civilizations that considered them unworthy of equal status. And in return, they were denied basic representation and treated like children who needed to be managed. Tell me, Counselor Vexstar, what responsibilities does the Council owe to humanity? Vexstar had no answer. Despite the objections, it was decided. A delegation would be sent to human space. They would request negotiations. They would offer concessions. Full council membership, voting rights, reduced fees, formal trade agreements on human terms. Whatever it took to bring them back, Captain Boren of the Krell was chosen to lead the expedition. He was a military officer, not a diplomat, but he was respected and known to be honorable. The delegation would include representatives from 5 major species, including Delara and a reluctant Vexstar. They would travel in a diplomatic vessel, unarmed, showing peaceful intentions. The journey to the Sol system took 2 weeks. As they approached the boundary of human space, the delegates felt increasingly nervous. They had no idea what to expect. Would the humans even acknowledge them? Would they be turned away at the border? Or worse, would they be attacked? The answer came when they reached the marked boundary of human territory. A simple, automated buoy was floating in space, broadcasting on all frequencies. The message was in perfect council standard, clear and emotionless. You are approaching human sovereign space. Turn back immediately. Unauthorized vessels will not be permitted to enter. This is your only warning. Boren consulted with his crew and the delegates. We have come too far to turn back now, he decided. We will cross the boundary slowly, broadcasting our peaceful intentions. Surely they will at least speak with us. The ship moved forward, crossing the invisible line that marked the edge of human territory. For a moment, nothing happened. Then every system on the vessel died. Lights, engines, weapons, navigation, everything went dark, except for minimal life support. The crew panicked, checking systems frantically. What happened? Vexstar demanded. Did they attack us? No weapon signatures detected, the sensor officer reported. Our systems just stopped working. All of them simultaneously. Then something appeared on their view screen. A ship. But not like any ship they had seen before. It was sleek and dark, its hull seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. It had been invisible to their sensors until it chose to reveal itself. Hovering less than a kilometer away, a voice came through their communication system, bypassing their dead equipment somehow. It was a human voice, calm and professional. Diplomatic vessel of the Galactic Council. This is Commander Hajin Yoon of the Human Defense Fleet. You were warned not to enter our space. Your vessel's systems have been temporarily disabled. You will be towed back to the boundary. Your crew will not be harmed. You have 10 seconds to acknowledge. Boren grabbed a backup communicator. Commander Yoon, we request an audience with human leadership. We come in peace to negotiate. There was a pause. Then Hagen's voice returned, and this time there was something like sadness in it. Captain Boren, you had 60 years to negotiate. You chose to make demands instead. The time for talk has passed. We are returning you to council space. Do not come back. Please, Delara transmitted. We understand we made mistakes. Allow us the chance to make things right. Another pause. Counselor Delara, nothing you can offer will change what has happened. We asked for respect and partnership. You gave us contempt and exploitation. We are no longer interested in being part of your council. This conversation is over. The human ship, still incomprehensible to their sensors, extended a tractor beam. The council vessel began moving backward, away from human space, completely helpless to resist, as they were towed away. Boren caught glimpses through the viewport. Far in the distance, he saw them. Dozens of ships, maybe hundreds, all similar to the one holding them. They moved in formations that were both beautiful and terrifying in their precision. Some were massive, larger than anything the council had built. Others were small and fast, darting between the larger vessels. And beyond the ships, he saw stations. Huge structures that seemed to blend organic curves with geometric precision. Defensive platforms that tracked their vessel as it passed. Construction yards where even more ships were being built. The humans had been busy, very busy. And they had been hiding their true capabilities for a very long time. When the council vessel finally crossed back into neutral space, their systems suddenly came back online. The human ship released them and vanished, disappearing from their sensors as completely as if it had never existed. The delegation sat in stunned silence. Finally, Vexter spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. What have we done? The delegation's reports sent shockwaves through the council. Vexstar stood before the assembled species and described what they had seen. The ships that appeared from nowhere, the weapons that could disable an entire vessel without firing a shot. The massive infrastructure that suggested humanity had been preparing for independence for years, maybe decades. They were holding back, he said, and for the first time his voice carried no arrogance. Everything they showed us, every ship, every technology, every capability was only what they wanted us to see. The truth is far beyond what we imagined. Delara added her own observations. The human ships we saw were not just advanced, They operated on principles we do not understand. Our sensors could not detect them until they chose to be seen. Their tractor beam worked through our shields as if the shields did not exist. And there were so many of them. Hundreds of vessels, and that was only what we glimpsed near the border. The council chamber erupted in discussion. Some species were frightened. Others were angry. A few, like the Krell, felt something close to respect mixed with their fear. Why did they hide this from us? Someone asked. Taiyang answered from his seat. They did not hide it. You simply never asked. You assumed human technology was inferior because you wanted to believe it. When human ships outperformed yours, you attributed it to luck or recklessness. When human weapons proved effective, you called them primitive, but efficient. You saw only what you expected to see. But the implications, Kryn said slowly, his mind working through possibilities. If they have been building this fleet in secret, what else have they been doing? What other technologies have they developed? Delara had been researching this question. She pulled up files on a human scientist named Sora Han. 10 years ago, Dr. Han published theoretical papers on quantum disruption fields. The Council's scientific community dismissed them as impossible fantasies. But if those fields are real, if they have been developed, they could explain how human ships disable other vessels without weapons fire. She pulled up another file. 15 years ago, a human engineer named Minji Choi proposed modifications to standard FTL drives that would increase speed by 40% while reducing power consumption. Our engineers said it violated fundamental principles. But humans, we just assumed they were pushing their engines beyond safe limits. File after file, she showed them. Human scientists publishing revolutionary ideas that were ignored or mocked. Human engineers proposing solutions to problems the Council had considered unsolvable. Every paper, every proposal had been made public, shared freely with the galactic community. The Council had access to all of it, but had chosen not to take it seriously. They gave us everything, Delara said quietly. They shared their knowledge openly. And we dismissed it because we could not imagine that humans, who we considered primitive, could teach us anything new. The full weight of their mistake was beginning to sink in. But there were more immediate problems to deal with. The Void Marauders had noticed the Council's weakness and were attacking in force. Admiral Hune stood before a tactical display showing the current situation. Red markers indicated Marauder fleet positions. Blue markers showed Council forces. The red far outnumbered the blue, and many Council positions were dangerously exposed. We are losing the border regions, she reported. The Marauders have taken 6 colony worlds in the past month. They are advancing deeper into Council space with each attack. Our forces are spread too thin, and we do not have the ships to reinforce critical positions. What about the defense platforms? Someone asked. The ones still functioning or holding, Han replied. But many platforms relied on human-designed targeting systems. Those systems are beginning to fail without maintenance. We are losing our defensive infrastructure at the worst possible time. Vexstar looked at the tactical display with growing despair. How long until they reach the core worlds? At their current rate of advance, 6 months, Heian said. Maybe less if they encounter no serious resistance. The chamber fell silent. 6 months until the heart of Council civilization came under attack. 6 months until thousands of years of peace and prosperity could be destroyed. We must ask Earth for help, Delara said. There is no other option. They will not help us, Vexstar replied bitterly. Did you not hear, Commander Yun? They are done with us. We have to try, Kryn insisted. Send a message. Offer them whatever they want. Territory, resources, complete autonomy, anything. A message was prepared. It was not a demand this time, but a plea. The Council formally requested Earth's assistance against the Void Marauders. They offered full Council membership, veto power over all decisions, exemption from all fees, and formal recognition of human superiority in military and technological matters. The message was sent on every frequency, through every channel. For 3 days, there was no response. Then, finally, a reply came. It was a simple text message, no video, no voice. Just words on a screen. Request denied. Humanity is not interested in council affairs. You have our best wishes for your safety, but we will not intervene in your conflicts. Do not contact us again. The message was signed by Juan Kim, still Earth's official representative, even though there was no longer a council for her to represent. Vexstar read the message and felt something break inside him. That's it? After everything we offered? Delara understood what he was feeling. She had felt it herself when she first read the reply. They do not want our offers. We are trying to buy what should have been freely given from the start. But the crisis was growing worse. The Void Marauders launched a massive assault on the Typhon Commonwealth. Their war fleet, over 300 ships strong, hit the already weakened Typhon defenses with overwhelming force. The Typhon, still struggling with their atmospheric processor failures, could not mount an effective resistance. The Council sent what forces they could spare, but it was not enough. Within 2 weeks, the Typhon had lost 15 major cities and billions of citizens. The survivors begged for help for evacuation. For anything, in desperation, Councillor Cephas of the Typhon sent his own message to Earth. It was not a political message, but a personal one. Recorded in his private quarters with tears streaming down his methane-breathing face. My name is Cephas. I voted against humanity's membership in the Council. I believed you were too violent, too primitive to be trusted with real power. I was wrong. I was so terribly wrong. My people are dying. Our children are dying. Not because of anything we did, but because we no longer have the protection we took for granted. Protection that humans provided, without ever being asked, without ever asking for thanks. I do not expect you to save us. I do not deserve your help. But I wanted you to know that I understand now. I understand what we lost when you left. And I am sorry. I am so, so sorry. The message was broadcast on open channels. Many species across the galaxy saw it. Some were moved. Others were bitter. But there was no response from Earth. Then something unexpected happened. The Void Marauders attempted to raid human territory. A Marauder war fleet, fresh from their victory over the Typhon, decided to test human defenses. 200 ships crossed into human space at a poorly defended section of the border. The attack lasted for hours. When it was over, the Marauder fleet had been completely destroyed. Not a single ship escaped. The Council's long-range sensors picked up the battle, though they could not see clearly what happened. All they knew was that the Marauders had entered human space with 200 warships and left with none. Reports began filtering in from surviving Marauder communications that were intercepted. The Marauders had encountered human ships they could not detect until it was too late. Weapons they could not defend against. Tactics they could not predict. The human defense had been brutal, efficient, and absolute. Word spread quickly through the galaxy. The Void Marauders, who had terrorized the Council for months, had been crushed in a matter of hours. And humanity had done it without apparent effort. Defending only their own borders, 3 more Marauder fleets tried to breach human defenses over the next month. All were destroyed. The Marauders, who feared nothing, began to fear humans. They stopped even approaching human territory and focused their attacks on Council space, where resistance was weaker. The Council watched this happen and felt a mixture of relief and despair. Relief that the Marauders were avoiding human space. Despair because it made their own weakness so obvious. The humans could defend themselves easily. The Council could not. Delara prepared one final message to Earth. It was personal, not official. She recorded it in her private chambers, her crystalline body pulsing with colors that indicated deep sadness. Ambassador Kim, this is Counselor Delara. I am not sending this message on behalf of the Council. This is just me speaking to you, one person to another. I know you have no reason to listen, but I wanted you to know something. I voted for humanity's full membership. I argued for it in private sessions. I was one of 3 who voted yes, but I understand now that voting yes was not enough. I should have fought harder. I should have spoken louder. I should have made others see what I saw in humanity. My silence, even as I voted correctly, was a betrayal. And I am sorry. I do not ask for forgiveness. I do not ask for help. I just wanted you to know that some of us saw your worth, even if we failed to defend it properly. I hope Earth finds the peace and prosperity it deserves. May you build something better than what we had." Message was sent. Like all the others, there was no reply, but Dallara felt better for having said it. Some truths needed to be spoken, even into silence, as the Council fractured under the Marauder attacks. As species began making separate peace deals or simply fleeing to safer regions, everyone understood the same terrible truth. The Galactic Council had depended on humanity far more than they had ever realized. And now that humanity was gone, the whole structure was collapsing. They had built their civilization on a foundation they never acknowledged. And now that foundation had walked away, 6 months after humanity's withdrawal. The Galactic Council held what would be its final official session. Only 23 of the original 47 species sent representatives. The others had either fallen to the Void Marauders, retreated into isolation, or simply stopped participating in what everyone knew was a dying institution. The chamber felt empty. Half the seats were vacant. Those who remained looked exhausted, defeated. High Arbiter Kryn stood at his podium, older and more tired than anyone had ever seen him. "We must face the truth," he said quietly. "The Council as we knew it is finished. Each species must now make their own decisions about survival. I will not judge those who choose to seek separate peace with the Marauders, or those who withdraw to defend only their own worlds. We are past the point where unity is possible." Vexstar sat in his seat saying nothing. His once proud species, the hierarchy, had lost a third of their territory. Their claims of superior civilization rang hollow now. He had not spoken in a council session for weeks. Dallara proposed one final attempt to contact Earth. "Let us send a message acknowledging our mistakes. Not asking for help, but simply taking responsibility for our failures. Perhaps in the future, when wounds have healed, some form of relationship might be possible." The proposal was accepted by those who remained. A formal statement was drafted, acknowledging that the Council had failed to recognize humanity's contributions, had treated them with disrespect, and had learned too late the cost of their arrogance. The message ended with a simple sentence: "We understand now. We wish you well." It was sent to Earth with no expectation of reply, and indeed no reply came. But this time, the silence felt different. Not hostile, just final. A door closed quietly, with no anger, just a gentle but absolute ending. Then something unexpected happened. A message arrived at the Council from an unknown source. It was an offer of mediation from a species no one had heard of. The Anari. They were a small civilization from beyond Council space, and they claimed to have recently established diplomatic relations with humanity. Earth has agreed to allow refugees from Council species to settle in neutral zones under Anari supervision. The message read, "These zones will be protected by human military forces against Marauder attacks. Any species wishing to relocate their civilians to safety may apply through Anari diplomatic channels." This is a humanitarian gesture, not a political one. Earth will not negotiate with the Council itself, but they will not allow innocent civilians to suffer if they can prevent it. The offer was stunning. Humanity was still refusing to help the Council directly, but they were willing to protect refugees. It was mercy without reconciliation, compassion without forgiveness. Millions of civilians from dozens of species took the offer. Typhon families fleeing the Marauder invasions. Krell children evacuated from war zones. Luminar communities whose worlds had fallen. They were transported to neutral zones on the edges of human space, given shelter and protection. The humans who administered these refugee zones were professional but distant. They provided food, medical care, and safety. They treated everyone with basic dignity, but they maintained clear boundaries. This was aid, not friendship. Help, not alliance. Some refugees tried to thank their human protectors, tried to explain that they had never personally supported the Council's treatment of humanity. The humans listened politely, but made no emotional connections. They did their job, and nothing more. One refugee, a young Luminor named Kess, who had once been Dallara's aide, tried to speak with the human administrator of her refugee camp. His name was Daeon Lee, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, but a reserved manner. "We know we do not deserve your help," Kes said, her crystalline body pulsing with ashamed colors. "But I wanted you to know that some of us understood. Some of us tried to speak up for humanity." Daeon looked at her for a long moment. "I believe you," he said finally. "But understanding is not the same as action. If you truly believed humanity deserved better treatment, you should have fought harder for it. Not just voted correctly, but fought. Made noise. Refused to accept silence. That is what we learned from our time with the Council. Quiet support means nothing if injustice continues." Kes had no response to that. She carried his words with her and thought about them often in the years that came. The Void Marauders continued their conquest of Council space for another year, before they made their fatal mistake. A massive Marauder fleet, emboldened by months of victories, decided to launch a coordinated assault on human territory from 3 different directions. They believed that if they could break through human defenses, the resources of Earth itself would be worth any cost. The battle was over in 6 hours. All 3 Marauder fleets were destroyed. Over 800 ships gone. But this time, humanity did not simply defend. They counterattacked. Human fleets emerged from their territory and systematically hunted down every Marauder military installation within 5 sectors. Marauder shipyards were destroyed. Marauder command centers were eliminated. Marauder supply depots were reduced to debris. The campaign lasted 3 weeks, and when it was over, the Void Marauders had effectively ceased to exist as a military threat. The Council species watched this happen with awe and terror. Humanity had not just defended themselves. They had ended the Marauder threat entirely, something the Council had never been able to do in centuries of conflict. And then the humans went home. They did not occupy Marauder territory. They did not claim the vacant space. They simply destroyed the military threat and withdrew to their own borders. The message was clear. Humanity could project power far beyond their territory if they chose to. They simply chose not to, unless directly threatened. The remaining Council species began to understand something profound. Humanity had been holding back for 60 years, not because they were weak, but because they had hoped to build something better than an empire. They had wanted partners equals friends. They had believed in cooperation and shared prosperity. Only when that dream died had they shown what they were truly capable of. Over the following years, the galaxy reorganized itself. Some species joined together in smaller regional alliances. Others remained independent. A few tried to maintain the old council structure, but it was a shadow of what it had been. Humanity expanded slowly into unclaimed space, building a network of colonies and stations. They encountered other species, small civilizations that had never been part of the council. These species found humans to be fair traders, reliable partners, and surprisingly generous with their knowledge and technology. But there was a difference. The species that earned human trust were treated as true equals. Their opinions were valued. Their cultures were respected. They received the partnership humanity had once offered the council, and they treasured it. 50 years passed. The young Luminar named Kes, now an old being by her species standards, heard that a human station had been established at the edge of what had once been council space. She decided to visit it, driven by curiosity and something like nostalgia. The station was beautiful, blending human engineering with design elements from a dozen species. It was busy and prosperous, filled with traders and travelers from civilizations Kes had never heard of. Everyone seemed relaxed, happy. There was none of the tension that had always existed in council spaces, where species constantly jockeyed for status and advantage. Kes found the station, commander's office, and requested a meeting. To her surprise, it was granted immediately. The commander was Daeon Lee, the same man who had run her refugee camp decades ago. He was older now, his hair completely white, but his eyes were still kind and still reserved. "Kes," he said, remembering her name after all these years. "What brings you here?" "I wanted to see what you had built," she replied. "I wanted to understand what we could have had if we had been wiser." Daeon gestured for her to sit. "You are welcome to stay as long as you like." This station is open to all peaceful visitors. Why? Kess asked. Why did humanity walk away instead of fighting for your place in the council? Dayon was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. Because some things are not worth fighting for. The council was never going to see us as equals. We could have forced our way to power, used our military strength to demand respect. But that would have made us conquerors, not partners. It would have proven Vextar right about our violent nature. So you left, Kess said softly. We left, Dayon confirmed. And in leaving, we found something better. Out here beyond the old council space, we met species who judged us by our actions, not by their prejudices. We built relationships based on mutual respect. We created what we had always wanted, just not with the people we originally hoped to create it with. Kess looked out the window at the busy station. Ships from dozens of species came and went peacefully. She saw humans working alongside beings she did not recognize, all treating each other with casual equality. Do you ever regret it? She asked. Walking away from the council? Dayon smiled, and for the first time, there was real warmth in it. Every day, I am grateful we left. We are stronger now, happier. We have real friends, real partners. The council taught us what we did not want to be, and in walking away, we discovered who we truly were. Kess stayed at the station for a week, observing. She saw how humans interacted with other species, how they shared technology freely with those who treated them well, how they maintained firm boundaries with those who did not. She saw strength without arrogance, power without dominance, generosity without weakness. On her last day, she met with Dayon again. I am going to write about this, she told him. About what the council lost. About what you built, so that others might learn from our mistakes. That would be good, Dayon said. History should remember the truth. Not to shame anyone, but to teach. We all make mistakes. The question is whether we learn from them. As Kess prepared to leave, she had one final question. If the council had changed, if they had offered real equality from the beginning, would humanity have stayed? Dayon looked thoughtful. Perhaps. But they did not change, and we did not stay. We cannot know what might have been. We can only work with what is. Kess left the station carrying Dayon's words with her. She spent the rest of her life writing and teaching about the fall of the Galactic Council and the quiet dignity of humanity's departure. Her work became required reading for many species. Cautionary tale about the cost of arrogance and the value of respect. The galaxy moved on. The old council became a story told to younger generations, a reminder of mistakes to avoid. Humanity continued to grow, continued to build, continued to thrive in their own corner of space. They did not forget the council, but they no longer defined themselves by that relationship. They had walked away in silence. And in that silence, they had found their voice. They had sought respect from those who would.